For years, I would argue that One Piece was the greatest piece of fiction ever written. And for a story that's been running over 20 years, it's done an amazing job. It continues to grow more compelling, questions posed decades ago are finally being answered, and the characters, boy are their backstories sad. What could change that? Well, yesterday I sat down for 8 hours and read the entirety of Goodnight Punpun. Oyasumi Punpun, or Goodnight Punpun by Inio Asano, is not a work of fiction. Well, technically it is, but it's more than that. It's a work of reality. This wasn't some challenge or some goal I had set. I had seen the cover and knew I wanted to read it. So I started watching a review on YouTube. The YouTuber said that it quickly became his favorite story. And I think I can say the same. I stopped his video 2 minutes in, wary of spoilers, and immediately began reading it. And I couldn't stop. I found myself 4 hours later in the same position, being woken from my trance by my dog Mercury, who needed to go outside. I would put my phone down, start preparing to leave, pick it back up, accidentally read another entire chapter, until it was another 15 minutes later and I was still standing by the door, phone in hand, scrolling through page after page. Admittedly, there are exciting plot points throughout, but the value of Punpun's story comes from the reality of the situations. The story takes place over the course of Punpun's childhood to young adult life, starting in elementary school and culminating in the conclusion when he's about 22. Moments like Punpun on the train with his friends, fitting bugles onto his fingertips, to his first conversation with God, made me instantly drawn into the story. And throughout, so many moments feel more true to real life than any media I have ever consumed. The reality, the emotions, and nostalgia of what it's like to be a child really quickly captured me, and I think it will for most readers. In the story, Punpun is represented as a small bird-like ghost kind of thing, and it seems strange when contrasted with the realism of every other character in the story, but the contrast serves a purpose. Not only does Punpun's identity help to alienate him from everyone else in the story, it helps the reader truly identify with him. Though he is represented as a strange little bird, he is truly a blank slate of a character. And throughout the story, his appearance changes, reflecting his mental state and character development or regression. I think I like Oyasumi Punpun more than One Piece. It's now been about a week since I've read the story, and a day hasn't passed that I haven't bawled my eyes out thinking of it since. That whole intro segment was written when I first read Punpun, and it still stands. Every few days, I rewatch a video essay on the story, and find myself in tears yet again. I don't think about it every day, but the days I do, it still has this strong power over me. Rewatching that video helps to keep me grounded. Punpun is about having the bravery to do things for yourself. It's about love in all its most selfish and beautiful forms. There was a constant theme of abuse running throughout the story, tying these characters' shared experiences together. It's about grief, guilt, regret, and every other beautiful emotion that's exclusive to the human experience. But we'll start with one that's very close to my heart. Guilt. I described guilt as beautiful, and surely guilt doesn't feel beautiful, but it does serve a beautiful purpose. I've often said in my writings, journalings, lyrics, and even to my friends who know the depths of my insanity, that I feel like I'm Jesus. And I don't mean that in the sense that I am godly. I just feel like I spend my life suffering for the sins and guilt of everyone. Others, even in situations that I'm not involved. Guilt is a big part of my life. The problem is, I don't know if it's justified anymore. I've done a lot to feel guilty for and ashamed about in my life, but I've made my apologies and faced the music in most situations. There's a point in the story, and this is a spoiler, but not one that really affects the plot at all. But Punpun's uncle is feeling guilty about something, or feeling a lack of purpose after losing and being forgiven for most of the guilt he had felt in his life. He is on his way to end his own life, taking a taxi out to the ocean in the middle of nowhere, when the nosy cab driver asks why he's going there. The uncle explains, and the cab driver tells him, "I used to be a Yakuza, and I had done things 100 times worse than you have. If I hadn't married Kami, I'd probably be a dead corpse somewhere right now. Of course, I caused many problems for her. She didn't say anything, but I considered her my fated person. As long as the kindness received from others is returned back, it's fine. Even if it takes time. And besides, you are a person that will return, am I not right? You do have people waiting for you to come back. I'm just an old fool, so I could be wrong, but I think that what people who have committed crimes need isn't punishment, but rather the knowledge of the pain of being forgiven. My wife Kami passed away last month. I only regret one thing. Before she died, I couldn't say thank you to her. You still must have things for you to do. Am I wrong?" As someone who consistently feels like Punpun's uncle earlier in the story, this hurt. While most people in my life have forgiven me for the wrongs I've committed against them, the hardest person to gain forgiveness from is yourself. I'm not saying you should carry your guilt with you every day, never allowing yourself understanding and forgiveness, but you should have the highest standards of all the people you need to gain forgiveness from. But you need to gain that forgiveness if you stand any chance of trudging forward. You alone should look at your actions and give yourself a hard time for them. The ease with which you gain forgiveness should be a reminder why you shouldn't have made that decision in the first place, and you should learn and grow. But most importantly, eventually you have to justify that decision you made. There are actions an individual can make that should never be forgiven. But finding the reasoning behind your own actions is the first step to understanding yourself and the mistakes you've made. And that grows to be a consistent theme throughout the story of Punpun. The titular character runs away, trying to escape his past and the unforgivable decisions he has made. But when he looks at his reflection, upon reaching the area that to him symbolizes freedom from the shackles of life, he realizes he hasn't changed, and nothing has. His life is still driven by the ignorant promises he made as a child, and those promises are irrational childhood dreams. Imagine being given a chance, or seeking out the opportunity to make up for your past mistakes, and you just make things even worse, doubling down on the actions you took before, and hurting even more people in the process, with the misguided thought that you're making it better for the one person you let down before. And you aren't. Punpun's wish is to disappear from the world, and be forgotten by everyone, which is never an option. As bad as your decisions may be, as selfish as you feel you may have acted, it's impossible to leave this earth without leaving an impact on the people's lives we touch. I, at times, share the same wish as Punpun, to lay underneath a starry sky and disappear, being forgotten by all those I've impacted in my life, even if those people no longer think that I was a negative force. But I know that wish is impossible. Sometimes taking your own life is described as the easy way out, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. But in a way, It would be easier, wouldn't it? To stop living with the regrets that have followed you since you were a kid. To not have to carry on hating the way you react to certain situations. To take an inventory and try your best to grow is much more difficult than resigning yourself to a life of unchanging stagnancy and suffering. Or to give in completely and remove the contributing factor from the earth. That's what Punpun is about. Everyone makes mistakes, everyone breaks promises, and everyone has deep regret. But still, we keep on moving, hopefully growing and learning from these experiences. When Punpun was a child, he made a promise to a girl named Aiko. They would run away together to Kagoshima. They set the date and packed their things. But on the day of their grand escape, something gets in the way. Something beyond Punpun's control. And as he passes Aiko standing there waiting for him, he realizes he is both simultaneously breaking a promise and giving up his opportunity for freedom. This life has obligations, and Punpun has to face them. But the broken promise doesn't leave his mind. Guilt shapes Punpun, and he's left wondering, what if? What if he and Aiko had run away? What if they had escaped their abusive families? Parents who are still themselves driven by childish, selfish ideals. Aiko leaves the story for a time, but the question remains in Punpun's mind. The hope remains too. That if one day, he and Aiko could run away together, they would be free from their shitty parents, from the embarrassing actions they made as children, free to live the lives they had always dreamed. As I've mentioned in videos on my other channel numerous times, I have the same desire to cut all ties and restart, but that isn't realistic. In the end, Punpun has to face everything that's happened. In the end, he has to come back, tail tucked, to the people who have cared for him. And he is accepted. Oyasumi Punpun is a heartbreaking piece of fiction that feels more like real life than a fictional story. It's about saying goodnight, not goodbye, to the decisions we have made in the past, right and wrong. Allowing yourself the right to move on and live another day, conscious of the decisions you've made and how they've affected you. But tomorrow is always a new day. There are videos out there on Punpun saying, don't read this manga, or don't read this manga if you have mental health issues. It is truly real and depressing. It will make you cry. I'm basically crying right now talking about it. But I think that is when its meaning will be taken most to heart. It's a tough recommendation to make because it deals heavily with suicide, rape, abuse, and every other unsavory thing that we humans do. But if you can get through it, I truly believe it will help you in some way. Please read this series. And if you do, check out Oyasumi Punpun and the Pain of Living, a video essay by Under the Scope. It's quite literally my all-time favorite video on YouTube. And if you enjoy it, I'd recommend any of Inio Asano's works. He is an incredible visual artist and a heartbreaking storyteller. There's a slice-of-life manga about two teenage high school girls in an apocalypse, and it's actually incredible, and it doesn't sound like something I would like, but it's called Dead Dead Demons Destruction. I think I got that right. And it's so good. Check it out. In the words of Pegasus, good vibrations.